that gets ripped more, and there's no empathy or no sympathy. Even on HBO's Hard Knocks. I mean, it was like anti-Daniel Jones. The Giants, Mara, the GM would talk about him. Daniel Jones was watching it. He's got a playoff win. Now, did the Giants reach to draft him at number 6? Yes. Is he overpaid currently in the NFL? Well, it's $40 million a year, not $55, but yeah. So yesterday there was a big scuffle. Lions, Giants at practice. And I got to be honest with you, Daniel Jones jumped right into the middle of it and was right there pushing back with everybody, and the coaches were like trying to pull the quarterback out. But I don't know. Maybe it's because, you know, he's getting paid more than he deserves. So what? So does the entire NFL. Maybe he went to Duke, easy to dislike, privileged school, or that he's a member of a team in New York. You know, that we tend to think of New York teams as getting too much free press. But nobody gets bashed more than Daniel Jones, and he's won a playoff game. And so I grew up, when I watched the Olympics, and I've had a ball watching the Olympics, so much patriotism, optimism. You know, the real stories aren't the ones people are talking about on Twitter. The real stories are Simone Biles, Katie Ledecky, these amazing women, Ukrainian athletes, Canadian athletes. It's just been wonderful. But, you know, the grifters are going to go to the negative. So, and talk about something they didn't know existed a month ago. But be that as it may, I grew up with baseball, football, basketball. There were box scores. And in gymnastics, when I watch it sometimes, I'm like, it's all subjective. I can't figure out the scoring. It's all subjective. I mean, I know if somebody falls off, you know, one of the beams, it's bad news, but I can't tell. And that's one of the things that is kind of mystifying to me about the Olympics. You train all these years, you cross your fingers, you get the right judge. But I was thinking about how I grew up with box scores and facts. And, you know, you could look at numbers and data. And so it's interesting, as much as we bash Daniel Jones, yet for like 2 years, people in the same city defended Zach Wilson. Daniel Jones is much better than Zach Wilson. Kenny Pickett was supported for a year in Pittsburgh. Daniel Jones is much better than Kenny Pickett. And then there's Justin Fields, who Daniel Jones is absolutely better than as well. You think I'm wrong? This is not gymnastics. Let's go to numbers. This is not gymnastics. In every crucial category, without question, with a worse offensive line, PFF last 2 years ranks the Giants O-line as bad as any in the league, and with clearly fewer weapons. No DJ Moore, right? No DJ Moore on the outside. Daniel Jones has won over twice as many games, completes a significantly higher percentage of his passes, averages more yards a game, touchdown interception ratio is better, so is the passer rating, behind a significantly worse O-line with fewer weapons. Well, Brian Daboll. Brian Daboll, the head coach, is Matt Eberflus, the head coach. Both are on the hot seat. Both have not proven to be great head coaches. Both are very good on their side of the ball. The Bears, week 10 last year on, were the best defense in the league. Well, they didn't have the best defensive personnel. Eberflus can clearly, as a young coach, dial up his side of the ball. And
okay, we got to unpack this because Colin is he's talking in every direction right now. Oh man, I don't even know where to begin, but let's just focus on what's right in front of us. First off, let's be very clear of what Colin had to say about Brian Daboll and Daniel Jones when they won that playoff game. He said, look at the brilliance of Brian Daboll. He got Daniel Jones paid. He turned Daniel Jones into a legitimate quarterback in the NFL. He was praising Brian Daboll for all of that. And we know, because Colin's very much like me, where we're both firm believers in these offensive coordinators or offensive head coaches and how much it matters. And that he's even said when Brian Daboll left Josh Allen, there was a major step back. And so then if we're going to say all that, well, then we have to give that benefit of the doubt to say a Justin Fields because he doesn't have those coordinating. Maybe we want to highlight, say, like a better offensive line or whatnot. But when we have to keep playing all these games, well, this guy has a better coordinator. This guy has a worse offensive line. Well, this guy has a wide receiver. This guy has no wide receivers. When you have to keep playing those games, it just kind of is more proof of, well, then these head-to-head stats are meaningless. It doesn't mean anything. Like, why are we going to then unpack it and look at it then? Because there's just too many variables where looking at something head-to-head does not make any sense. It's like saying, let's look at the safety of this medication, Advil or chemo. And it's like, well, they're two completely different medications being studied under two completely different circumstances. So their safety profile is meaningless. Like, that's what we're doing here with some of these statistical, comparisons. Because the variables, there's just too many variables at play. Too many variables. So it falls on deaf ears to me, quite frankly. Not to mention, just the other day, Colin was praising, I don't want to say praising Justin Fields, but definitely talking him up. And saying about the excitement and how, he can be successful with Pittsburgh. So it's just, I just kind of take issue with this conversation as a whole. And as you guys know, Colin Cowherd is my favorite, without a doubt. It's not even close. There's not even a close second. Colin, because I think everything Colin says is at least coming from a place of sincerity. So he's kind of clearly changed his mind a little bit. And I don't know if he's now no longer higher on Brian Daboll or what the story is, or if he thinks maybe he's a good offensive mind, but not a good head coach, which is definitely a possibility. But I just think it's unfair the way this is kind of just being the conversation as a whole, quite frankly, in terms of, who Daniel Jones is as a quarterback. Listen, is Daniel Jones just hot garbage trash? No, he's not. But this is who I think Daniel Jones is. Daniel Jones is who the haters of Brock Purdy think Brock Purdy is. That's who Daniel Jones is. He is the quarterback that the haters that say Brock Purdy essentially is not a good quarterback and he's only good because of his system, because of Shanahan, because of McCaffrey, because of, Ayuk and Debo and all these guys, that anyone can do his job. That's who Daniel Jones is. Where, yeah, if you put Daniel Jones with the 49ers, he would be significantly better. His numbers would be significantly better. But he wouldn't be as consistent or as good or make the right decisions as regularly as, say, a Brock Purdy. Maybe you could say that his his ability to run and his athleticism is a little bit underrated, so maybe that could like open up the playbook a bit, possibly. But I'm very confident that he's nowhere near as consistent of a passer as, say, Brock Purdy. So you can have success with Daniel Jones. But yeah, you do need to have a good offensive line. You do need to have a good coordinator. You do need to have a run game. You do need to have some weapons to throw to. You need to have a team. And the truth is the Giants haven't had a team. And you can blame, like, who do you want to blame? You can blame Brian Daboll because it's like kind of like, hey, he is the head coach. He should be able to build an offensive line. Andy Reid was. But I don't know the collaborative relationship with the GM. Like, I don't know. I know Andy Reid has a tremendous amount of say with Kansas City. So it is a little bit easier for him to kind of impose his will and say, okay, we need to fix this offensive line. Let's go. And then once he actually gets the pieces, he can coach it to being a significantly better offensive line. He has that runway. I don't know what Brian Daboll necessarily has in New York in that regard. So it's just, to kind of even compare this Daniel Jones to Justin Fields situation is kind of a little silly to me because I get it. What he's trying to say is that people are still saying that Justin Fields is a top level talent, that he's a top level quarterback, and that, that once he just needs another chance. And then they're saying, and he's kind of saying, well, look, Daniel Jones hasn't really had a much better situation, and he's been able to do more than Justin Fields. Therefore, Daniel Jones is actually, we can make the argument that Daniel Jones is actually a good quarterback, or that Justin Fields clearly is not. But the other point is that Colin went on a whole rant before about how Chicago consistently fails quarterbacks and that it is a problem fundamental to the Chicago Bears. And if that's the case, well then why should we blame Justin Fields then for his failures? So it's just like, to me, it's just like, no matter how we want to look at it, if we're looking at it from kind of the perspective that Colin is trying to map out, well, then just none of it really makes sense. It just doesn't really add up. That's why I don't think it's helpful. It actually just muddies the water even more. Because like I just said, Colin literally went on a whole rant about Chicago, saying that there's a fundamental issue with Chicago and their quarterback play. That Chicago has to take blame for all these failures. And it's like, okay, well, if they take blame, then you can't blame Justin Fields. And if you can't blame Justin Fields, then comparing Justin Fields to Daniel Jones is not really a good comparison, now is it? I don't think so. So, listen, I think the Giants have just been a really messy franchise with, yes, a terrible offensive line, and especially as the league continues to get more and more offensively driven, whether it's just also just because of philosophy or the actual rules in the NFL, we recognize how brutally important it is to have a legit offensive line, right? We saw that even someone as amazing as Patrick Mahomes could not overcome a poor offensive line, or at least that's as the legend is told as to why he lost against Tom Brady. And if we accept that as a truth, that Andy Reid and Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes, that they were unable to overcome that, then why should we expect any other coach-quarterback combo? Why should we ever expect Daniel Jones to be able to overcome that? We shouldn't. So then the real question is like, well, where does that blame go to then? Right? Like I said, is it the coach? Is it the GM? Is it the ownership? Right? Like what is actually the story here? So I think if Daniel Jones played for a more consistent, reliable franchise, or just a more consistent, reliable team at this point, I'm not saying that there's anything fundamentally wrong with New York, then I do think that Daniel Jones would kind of have elevated stock in terms of his perception. They would probably see him as a good quarterback, not a disaster quarterback, not a failing quarterback. But I'm not seeing where Daniel Jones can take a team to the next level. But we did see that when he did have some consistency and some stability, he can be successful. But what we've also seen is that he's unable to kind of be resilient when things aren't that way. And to me, that's what then it ultimately gets boiled down to, is that's the type of quarterback who Daniel Jones is. Give him a great situation, he could probably be a pretty darn good quarterback. Give him a good situation, and then he starts flirting with average or below average, with some good and great moments, but definitely not consistently. And then that's how you end up with a 22-36-1 record. It's that simple. If Colin wants to say, well, we have the data, we have the stats, well, there you go. That's what he is, a 22-36-1 quarterback. When things are going pretty well, when Daboll's got this offense firing, Daniel Jones can really cruise, and he can win a playoff game. When things are a little bit more fragile, when Saquon goes down, when the offensive line isn't great, Daniel Jones has shown that he can't overcome that. So that's who he is. But those are just my thoughts. I would absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think? Do you think Daniel Jones is actually like a pretty good quarterback who's just been playing for a bad team, like a lot of people say about Justin Fields? Or no, do you think Daniel Jones is just not that great, despite whatever argument we want to lay out? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.